Welcome back everyone to your practice report for the 2020 Hungarian Grand Prix. If you are new around here or just need a bit of a refresher, in the practice reports we go through both of today's practice sessions, the morning session 1 and the afternoon session number 2, have a bit of a discussion and a bit of a debate about what the pecking order is going to be over the course of the weekend, qualifying pace, race trim, and we're also going to have a look at the Formula 2 qualifying that took place this afternoon, just briefly, and also your predictions from yesterday's video. So if you want to keep up to date with all Formula 1 2020 news, session reviews, and all that good stuff, subscribe button is down below. Hit that like button if you do enjoy. But without further ado, let's crack on with some times. And this morning's session could prove to be a vital session indeed. This afternoon, wet conditions, very limited running. This morning could be make or break, but in the session, no surprise, Mercedes 1-2. Lewis Hamilton, a 1:16.003. Not only was that 1 second quicker than last year's time set in FP1 by Mercedes, he also set it on the hard compound tyres. Hamilton already looking very, very good this weekend. Valtteri Bottas P2, so close to his teammate, but his fastest lap time on the medium compound tyres. Hamilton's lap this morning, I really can't understate just how ridiculously good it was. That Mercedes car looks so planted around the entire lap. And you got to think to yourself, it's only Friday. Goodness me, their pace is going to be frightening in qualifying and in the race. But it wasn't just a Mercedes 1-2. Perez and Stroll made it a Mercedes 2020 car 1-2 and their 2019 car 3-4. Racing Point, of course, using a car very similar to last year's Mercedes. And Renault have protested the fact that their car is so similar to last year's Mercedes, but their pace also looked very good here in Hungary. Third for Perez, fourth for Stroll, both their lap times set on the soft tyres. Daniel Ricciardo probably will be very happy with today's morning's running. Fifth overall, very competitive time. Also, when you consider the fact it was on the medium compound tyres. Vettel and Leclerc, 6th and 7th, also on the medium compound tyres. Verstappen down in 8th, struggled this morning. Had a few run-ins with backmarker cars, we'll talk about that in a moment. Norris 9th and Esteban Ocon rounded out the top 10. The bottom half in the morning session, Carlos Sainz was P11 for McLaren. It was then Alex Albon in a Haas sandwich, Magnussen 12th, Albon 3rd and Grosjean 14th. Nicholas Latifi beat out both of the AlphaTauris and both Alfa Romeos, finishing P15. Danny Kvyat, the only AlphaTauri to compete in FP1. Giovinazzi 17th, Russell 18th, Robert Kubica taking the place of Kimi Raikkonen in this morning's session was P19, and Pierre Gasly did not set a single lap time with power unit issues. This afternoon's session was certainly not your bog standard practice session. Wet conditions, changeable conditions, but a big handful of drivers deciding to not do a single lap at all this afternoon. And when we have our discussion in a moment about the pecking order of the weekend, I'm not really going to take practice 2 into account, but just for a laugh, here are your times. And for the first time in 2020, a Ferrari is at the top of the standings. Sebastian Vettel, a 1:40.464, your fastest lap in the afternoon. Valtteri Bottas did a few exploration laps, trying to find a bit of grip in the closing stages. I think he did 5 laps right at the end of the session, unable to beat Vettel's time set a little bit earlier on. Carlos Sainz, top 3 again for McLaren after qualifying 3rd in wet conditions last time out in Styria. Then it was the 2 Racing Points, Stroll beating out his teammate this time round in P4 and P5. Gasly got a few laps in of running, but considering he missed the morning session, could have really done with just a slight 10 minutes or so of dry conditions. Sadly for him, he's going to go into tomorrow completely blind, especially if there's no practice 3. Verstappen, P7, Grosjean, P8. I think that's the first time all year a Haas car has classified inside the top 10 for any session, so there's something for them to be happy with. Raikkonen 9th and Charles Leclerc P10. Giovinazzi, Norris and Kvyat also set lap times. Ocon, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Latifi, Russell, Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen all failed to set a competitive lap time, but most of them went out a little bit, did an install lap but then came straight back in, but all of those 6 drivers did not set a time. And that is your results from FP1 and FP2. Realistically, We have no idea what the pecking order is this weekend. Yes, I think Mercedes are going to be the team to beat. Hamilton, a mighty job in first practice. Bottas not too far behind. And when you also consider just how good Lewis Hamilton is at this circuit, this weekend can equal the record set by Michael Schumacher for the most wins in a particular country. Michael Schumacher did it in France. Lewis Hamilton can equal that record on 8 here in Hungary this weekend. He seems to love this place. Mercedes have done great over the last couple of years. Wet conditions as well. Surely Hamilton is pretty much nailed on for a pole position and victory. Surely. But Bottas isn't as good as Hamilton in wet conditions, but still I would say that Mercedes is looking comfortably above the rest. Behind them though, it's all a bit of a mix, really. And if we have wet conditions for qualifying, and looks like we could see it for the race as well, Red Bull seem to have been dragged back into that midfield fight. Yes, I think they're the second best car, but I think Racing Point are going to be right on their heels. And Alex Albon really struggled in first practice, all the way down in 13th place, and didn't set a single lap time in wet conditions this afternoon. Also struggled in wet qualifying last time out in Styria. However, I do still hold it true that he was brilliant in last year's German Grand Prix in wet conditions. So I'm interested to see how Alex is going to be able to develop this weekend. A little bit of pressure coming on him from the media after a disappointing Styrian Grand Prix, but he got 4th place, equalled his best result in F1, got some points on the board, and hopefully he can build that bit of momentum this weekend. Behind them though, it really is a free-for-all. Ferrari looked better in wet conditions, but then again, last time out, not looking fantastic. And in the dry conditions, once again, Ferrari not looking too great. But the likes of Racing Point, Renault and McLaren are all right there with them. And it's just going to be which driver on the day can get a clear bit of track, nail the conditions, and set a clean lap time. And if that is the case with wet conditions, I think we're set for a very, very exciting midfield. I also think AlphaTauri could be a little bit closer this weekend. They've said in their pre-weekend interviews that they think this car is suited more to the circuits like Hungary, like your Monacos. I know we're not going to Monaco this year, but more downforce based, that's where they think their strengths lie. And both Gasly and Kvyat are confident they could be closer to the points. And then behind them, once again, I think we've got that backmarker grid of your Hasses, your Alfa Romeos, and your Williams. However, Williams did show last time out that in wet conditions, George Russell is very, very capable of dragging that car to some great results. Latifi also did a really strong job in qualifying, considering it was his first ever wet conditions, and his best lap time didn't count because of a red flag. So Williams could be a team to watch, and we could see maybe, this is probably a bit of a push guys, but maybe both cars getting through to Q2 if the conditions are wet enough. Will be fun to keep an eye on. But I'll leave the analysis there because with the conditions today, it's so hard to judge what's going on, but I certainly think the pecking order carried over from Austria, it'll change a little bit, but for the most part will be the same. Right, before we go, shall we quickly take a look at the Formula 2 grid for this weekend's feature race, and then after that we'll quickly take a look at your predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix. It was Callum Ilott taking his second ever Formula 2 pole position. Wet conditions, I feel like I've said conditions so many times today, but UNI Virtuosi going out at a completely different time to the rest of the field, trying to get a clear track, worked a treat. First and third for them, Guan Yu Zhou in third place. Luca Giotto splitting the two of them, caught out by a red flag late on, but Giotto's pace in the wet was so mighty. Super unlucky to miss out on pole position. Dan Tickton was fourth with Mick Schumacher, last year's sprint race winner here in Hungary in P5. Lundgaard championship runner-up P6. Armstrong P7. Aitken, Galeo and Alesi round out your top 10, with Robert Schwartzman outside the top 10 having a lot to do in tomorrow's feature race. And before we go, your predictions from this weekend, as always, as we do before every race weekend. In our previews, I give you this grid. I want to know your pole position, front row and biggest shot from qualifying, winner, podium, first retirement, DOTT, and best of the rest in the Grand Prix. And our two favourites this week, first of all, your winner, Szymon Dabrowski, is what I will go with. Apologies if I got that slightly wrong. He's gone with a Lewis Hamilton pole position with Max Verstappen on the front row, and a huge shock, absolutely huge shock. If you thought I was off my rocker earlier on, he's gone with George Russell Q3. I think he's relying on wet conditions there. And in the race, he's gone from a Lewis Hamilton victory, Max Verstappen second, Alex Albon picking up his first ever Formula 1 podium, Latifi to retire, and Sainz to be best of the rest and driver of the day. Our second place man, Rahul Machamindra. Again, I've probably got that wrong, apologies. But qualifying predictions, Bottas on pole with Verstappen on the front row. Biggest shock in qualifying, a Charles Leclerc crash. Had a crash last year in qualifying, didn't he? Didn't cost him too much in the end, but in a midfield fight this year, they need every point they can get. And in the race, he's gone with a Max Verstappen victory, making it 3 in 3. Bottas and Vettel on the podium. No sign of Hamilton anywhere, so I'm not too sure whether he's just discounted Hamilton or there's some kind of incident that maybe goes on with Lewis Hamilton. First retirement, Carlos Sainz. Driver of the day, Max Verstappen. And best of the rest, Lando Norris. And that is your lot from this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix Practice report. If you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. Hope you enjoy qualifying tomorrow and the race on Sunday, and I hope to see you all in the next one.